is Pallavi. Today we will discuss about the payment system and integration for a e-commerce client. So the content of today's presentation is we will discuss about the entire payment system, the key points whatever required for the payment system, and in our project we are implementing the Stripe payment service provider. So we will discuss in detail about the Stripe functional and technical integration overview, the functional requirements of the project, the pay-in payout system, payment domain and the detailed architecture about the payment domain, the Stripe checkout flow and the end-to-end payment flow, REST standards for implementation of APIs, and again we will discuss about the live mode and test mode which is provided by the Stripe documentation, checkout integration with Stripe, and the API analysis. So for the API analysis in our project we are using the Postman, and in detail the Postman API call, and lastly again we are discussing about the microservices. Now then let's start with the payment system. So in any project, suppose the payment integration for our e-commerce project, suppose if we are considering the e-commerce client, we are the part of the payment team. There is the client in a e-commerce site. Whenever customer want to do a payment, they are choosing the debit card, credit card or a phone pay. We will take care of that logic in our payment system. So first of all we will discuss about what is the payment system. We design a payment system for an e-commerce application, and whatever we are designing that payment system, it is reliable, scalable and flexible payment system. And it is also called as a payment gateway, is a service that processes the online payments. It enables the merchants to accept the credit cards and other forms of electronic payments securely over the internet. The popular payment gateway includes PayPal, Stripe and Square. Next, we will discuss some key points regarding the payment system. Suppose as you are building a payment backend for an e-commerce application. Suppose we will consider the Amazon.com. When a customer places an order on Amazon.com, the payment system handles everything related to the money movement. So for this we are using the APM, that payment system should all of these points in a real life, like a cards or alternate payment methods. For card processing we generally means use the third party payment services. It is called as a PSP, payment service providers. Due to extremely high security and compliance requirement, we do not store card numbers directly in our payment system. Whatever we are designing or application in that system we are not storing. We are using a third party payment services. So we rely on third party payment processors to handle all those sensitive card data. Any company which accepts or stores processes direct credit card numbers has to a payment card industry data secure standard, which is called as a PCI DSS. Now we will continue through that key points. So whatever the payment methods we discussed, that alternate payment methods or a card payment, card means a debit or a credit cards, and the payment service providers. The payment service providers are Trustly, PayPal and Stripe. In our project we are using the Stripe payment service provider. And the payment type. So the payment type is a one-time payment or it is a subscription type. Again we will go through what is mean by the hosted page. The hosted page, the payment page which provided by the PSP, that third party service. The e-commerce application which redirects to the customer to the hosted page when they complete their transactions, and they would return back to the e-commerce website, that is called as a hosted page. Next, now we will discuss about the functional requirements of our project. So first of all, we will discuss about what is pay in and what is pay out. When a customer redirect on a hosted page, he want to complete the payment, his payment. After successful payment, the amount is credited in a bank account. It is nothing but the PSP, that is Stripe Payment Provider Service. Then a Stripe send a webhook whether the payment is failed or a succeed to a e-commerce site. If a payment is successful, all amount will create in a seller's account. And in this project, we are focusing on paying service only. Now, see, this is a diagram. Here, the e-commerce platform through the front end page, suppose the customer is on a checkout page. He clicked the checkout button, then the customer calls the payment system. Then the payment system, it will connect to the Stripe, that is a third party payment provider service. And the Stripe, in this Stripe provides the hosted page. On that hosted page, the customer will complete the payment. Again, after completing the payment, the Stripe will send the webhook to the payment system. The webhook means they will provide the whether the payment is success or a fail, and the same again the response is sent back to the e-commerce system. Now, then we will go through the payment domain and architecture of diagram of the service. Here, if you are observing, so the e-commerce platform, it may use any language, Java, PHP or a Python. So in this e-commerce platform, the customer wants to is on a checkout page. He wants to do the payment. So he calls the payment service. So we are a part of the payment service. We are working on a payment service. For that payment service development, we are using the microservice architecture. In that microservice architecture, we are developing the three services. First, the validation service. The second is the payment processing service, and the last one is the Stripe provider service. Again, here we are connecting to the database also. So this payment service is connected to the Stripe, and the Stripe again it will send the means when a customer calls when payment service redirect the customer on a Stripe hosted page. Then the customer will complete the payment. After completion of the payment, the Stripe system will send the webhook to the payments team, means our project whatever we are designing, and that same response we are sending back to the e-commerce website. So whenever we are designing the payment system, it is a highly responsible system. So means we cannot double process the payment. It is two-time payments. Any kind of failure is not allowed, and the system should always be in a stable, and the security keys we are providing for that URL. Now then we will discuss detail about the Stripe checkout flow. So this is the diagram. It will clearly explain the Stripe checkout flow. So here if you are observing, client is there, server, Stripe API, with the Stripe checkout page. So here first, when a customer are ready to complete their purchase, your application creates a new checkout session. Means customer is on a checkout page, he is on an e-commerce website. He send the request to the server. Server means as a one of the service means we are designing the payment service. When a customer is on a checkout page, he calls the payment service. Then the payment service will create the checkout session. The checkout session which will provide the URL. That URL redirects the customers to a Stripe hosted page. So then customer enter their payment details on the payment page and complete the transactions. See here, the customer send the request to the payment service. The payment service means we are creating the checkout session, and that checkout session it will contain the URL. That URL we redirect the customer on a Stripe checkout page. See, the redirect the customer URL from Stripe checkout session. Then the customer is on a checkout Stripe checkout page, that hosted page. Then customer completes the payment. He will enter all the details, bank details. Then he completes the payment. After completion of payment, then customer return back to the application. Then after the transaction is completed, a webhook is sent by the Stripe API system to the payment service. We are the part of the payment service. Whether the payment is successful or a failed, that message it will send Stripe sends to the payment service. So this is the entire Stripe checkout flow. Now the checkout integration with Stripe, that there are two types of here ways of implementing the checkout. You can embed the checkout directly in your website or redirect the customers to a Stripe hosted payment page. So what is exact meaning by this? We will go through this document that is provided by the Stripe. So Stripe checkout page, in a Stripe documentation, they mention the checkout is a low-code payment integration that creates a customizable form of collecting the payments. You can embed a checkout directly in your website or redirect the customers to a Stripe hosted payment page. It supports one-off payments and subscriptions and accepts over a 40 local payment methods. So here we are able to implement this hosted page, Stripe hosted page, or an embedded form. In our project, we are using the Stripe hosted page. Now again we will continue to the next point. Now we will discuss about the end-to-end payment flow. So here if you are observing the diagram, the customer, see, this is the client browser and this is the payment system. The client browser, the customer is on a checkout pause. He want to make a payment. Then customer click a checkout button, means he calls the payment service. See here, the checkout one, he calls the payment service one. With the payment order information, whatever the order information, along with that order information, he calls the payment service. After the payment service sends a payment request to the PSP, that is a Stripe or a PayPal, any that third party payment provider service. After the payment service sends a payment request to the PSP with order information and redirect URL. Then this PSP, it will provide the return payment token, and that return payment token, the payment service, it will store in a database in a payment system. After that, the payment service display the payment page with a token, means the customer redirect on a hosted page. See, this is the hosted page. Then after, so on a client hosted page, he completes, start the payment. He will start the payment, he complete the payment by clicking on pay button. The PSP starts a payment process. After customer clicking the pay button, the PSP starts the payment process. After payment process, the PSP returns the payment status. Then the hosted page redirects the customer to the completion page, whether the payment is completed or not. After that, the PSP, the third party payment survey, whatever we are using, it will send the webhook with a completion result to the payment service. Whether the payment is successful or failed, with a webhook, it will send to the payment service. So this is the entire end-to-end payment flow. Now, next we will discuss Stripe functional and technical integration overview. So as we discussed in this project, we are integrating with the third party. That is the Stripe payment provider system. We are the part of the payment system team integrating all the payments into the system. Every third party provider provides a API integration documentation. That documentation in detail we are studying while making a API call. So every third party is the API integration document. API document provides the PDFs, web links, which helps the tech team to build the software and to do the coding according to the standards. So the technical team needs to understand all these API integration documents so that they can code Stripe into a system. In this project, we are implementing that Stripe payment integration. So as I shown, we are using the Stripe integration. So these are the some documents we are referring: authentication, create session, the testing page. So we will discuss one by one. Now the next point is the REST standards for implementation of APIs. APIs on a web are called as a web APIs. Now to call these APIs, we are using the Stripe documentation. We are reading first the stock. We are understanding the what is the standards given by the Stripe by calling the APIs. API reference. So the Stripe API is organized around the REST. So in our application, while we are using the microservice architecture, and in that we are using the REST calls. So our API adds predictable resource-oriented URL accept form encoded request body. So while calling the APIs, we are using the form encoded, and the return, the response, whatever it is given, it is in a JSON encoded response and uses the standard HTTP response codes, authentication and work. So we are using a form. It is clear we are using the form encoded and authentication. Some authentication we need to do while calling the APIs. So you can use the Stripe API in the test mode. So we are using the test mode. We will study what is a test mode and live mode. So which doesn't affect the live data or interact with the banking networks. So the API provides the test documentation. See, this is the Stripe documentation testing page. Means some test cards provided by the Stripe. By using this, we can able to check the API. See here, the dummy data is given, the dashboard. Here, so these are cards. By using this data, we are able to test the REST API. So we are using the test mode. The API key you use to authenticate the request determines whether the request is live mode or a test mode. So we need to authenticate the URL. The Stripe API doesn't support the bulk updates. You can work on only one object per request. So we are able to only call one object. The Stripe API differs for every account as we release new version and tailor function. So if you are observing here, a base URL is given. HTTPS. S means it is secure. api.stripe.com. This is the base URL. It is given by the Stripe document. Now authentication. So the Stripe API uses API keys to authenticate the request by calling the any URL. We are providing the API key. You can view and manage your API keys in a Stripe dashboard. So the test mode secret keys have the prefix. So the secret SK on test, and live mode secret have a K live. Alternately, you can use the restricted API keys for a granular permission. So we are using the test mode. So test authentication. See, all API requests must be made over HTTPS calls. Calls made over a plain HTTP will fail. So we are using the security keys. That's why we are using the HTTPS. We are not using HTTP. So authentication request here, if you are observing, see, this is the base URL and is provided by the Stripe. Is the authentication request. Now again we will move through the next point. So we are following the whatever the standards given by the Stripe documentation. According to that, we are means when the URL. How to pass a request data accept form encoded request or what to expect in a response. We will study in detail the Stripe documentation, and according to that we will call the API. Now the live mode and test mode we discuss. We are using the test mode. Now the API analysis. For that API analysis, we may use the browser, or by curl command also we are able to call the APIs, and Postman. So in our project we are using the Postman API call. Now our aim is to type API call to get the URL using whatever the information we know as per the Stripe data. Now we will call the API through the Postman. I will open the Postman. Now I already created a Stripe create session. So in a Stripe they are given a create a session. So we are working on a create session. See, if you see the flow of the checkout, okay. In order to redirect the customer on a hosted page, we need to create a session. So we are now create a checkout session. So that's why we are reading the checkout session documentation, which is provided by a Stripe. So create a section. See here, if you are observing, a curl command is given and the request is post request. See here, v1 slash checkout session. So this URL is given by the curl. By using this URL, we are making a API call. So this is the request URL and The response is it is in a JSON format. The request is in a curl and the see this is the curl command and the response it is in a JSON format. So after calling this URL, we are getting the response back with redirect URL. See the redirect URL along with ID. A unique ID is provided by the Stripe. Here, this is the ID. Now we will make the API call on a Postman. See, this is the request http api.stripe.com v1 checkout session, which is given by the Stripe documentation. See here, same URL we are using. Copy this URL, then paste in a Postman. Okay, then here if you are observing, the authorization, in authorization, basic auth is given. Here we need to provide a username and password. See here, username, the key is provided by, authentication key is provided by the Stripe documentation. Go to the Stripe documentation. So here our aim is to make a Stripe API call to get the URL using whatever the information we know as per the Stripe data. So go to this URL in a create session, copy the URL request with sample data with a secret key. So the secret key is provided by the Stripe documentation. So I am on a Stripe documentation create session. Okay, copy this URL, go to the Postman. In a Postman, now you click on this plus button. It will show the create, means a blank collection. Click on the blank collection. I already created a collection in order to make the API call. So we are on this window after clicking that. So we are making a post fixing as per this type documentation. Here the request is a post, that's why I have selected the post request. So here so many options are there. We are making a get request or a post request, put request. As per the documentation we need to perform the post request. Then copy the URL, paste here. Then you are getting the body with data. Here the line items is the data is stored in a array format. The payment mode, see this is a key value pair. The data in a collection we are storing as a key value pair. So the success URL, see the HTTPS, after successful payment we are getting this success URL. Again the next key is the unit amount. The unit amount we are seeing as a 90,000 here, and the product data iPhone, and the currency in a INR. So we need to send us some data along with this URL as a body, and it will contain the key value pair. Now line items, price, data, the currency is INR. I will send the request. So we will try with the cancel URL after I already tried it. Then we will send the request to the Postman along with the data. So before sending the request, now you will go to the authorization. We need to pass the secret key here. It is provided by the Postman. Go to the documentation. In a documentation, in authentication, here the secret key, they are provided the secret key. So API key, copy that secret key and paste here. send the request. So in this response, you are getting the redirect the URL. See here, the redirect the URL from the Stripe and along with ID, a unique ID is generated with each URL. Then copy this URL, go to the browser, again I will send the request. Now then copy this URL, go to the browser, now we are on hosted page. See here, according to the Stripe documentation, we will test the cards which is provided by the Stripe documentation. Here, card numbers for a successful payment. First, we will check the successful payment whether we copy this. Email, type the expiry date, CVV, card holder name, and click on pay button. Now see the success URL example.com success. So we are getting the payment was success. Now we will check the next case. Here we will go through the Postman, create session. Then again we will check with the failure payment. Send. So again we are getting a new URL with unique ID. Here the unique ID. Copy this URL, go to the browser, paste the URL, from Stripe documentation. From declined payments, copy this number, card number, go to the URL. So here, paste the card number, enter the data, remaining data, enter expiry date, then click on a pay button. Now it is processing. See, now you are getting the message your credit card was declined. Try paying with a debit card instead. But customer still on this hosted page, we need to check whether it is any back button is provided or any cancel URL is provided. We will see in the next session.